Hello, welcome to Design Time. I'm Jackie Lacey. Today we're going to continue with our series looking at the elements and principles of design, but specifically today I'm going to look at some of the techniques, some of the basing ideas that you want to make sure that you pay close attention to if you're going to use them. Now, when we look at techniques that we're going to use for competition and certification, one of the reasons that we pay a lot of close attention to that is because that's what your evaluators are going to look for. We base everything on techniques that are done correctly, that are used in the right way, that fit with the category and with the description that's been given for that particular design that needs to be created. So as we begin to incorporate them into what we do, it's not just the fact that you did that technique or you used that particular creative flair, but that it's also executed properly and it fits the category specific that they're looking for. As we begin to look at some of the things that we've done here, paving and pillowing gets confused quite often. Remember that when you pave floral product, like we've got here, pave is all the flowers at one level covering the mechanics. So it's like when you do the roses in a cone-shaped bouquet where everything's exactly at the same level. There's no discrepancy, texturizing, or adding in depth, where with pillowing, it tends to pillow or billow stronger or higher in the center and then flow from that point. Sort of like a multiple scoop ice cream cone where that billows around where it starts in the center. If we're going to terrace something, that means gradiating up in size or shape. It naturally looks like stair steps, like we've done here with the mushroom. By inserting that at different levels, it almost looks like stair steps coming down, can create some great texture within a design. You would want to pay close attention looking in between each of those mushrooms that you've tucked either some foliage, some moss, or something like that to cover up your mechanics so that we can't see the foam. It's one of the things that all of us look for when we start to evaluate. Foam is one of those things that's really black and white. It's covered or not. So we want to make sure that we cover that up with some product. When we look at binding and banding, remember that binding is a mechanical thing. It is binding something together. We're actually using something to attach it, to keep it and control it. Banding is decorative. It's wrapped around to cover up where it has been binded together, and maybe we use something that couldn't be left exposed. But in today's market with the products that we have available, we can have binding and banding in one product because this binds it together and it bands it in a decorative flare with that metallic sheen that we have on the metallic wire. When it comes to manipulation, foliage manipulation is a great way to add some creative flair. Here we've used an Aspidistra leaf to create a rose. In this particular instance, we've used lily grass to braid into the shape of a rose by the way that we spin it around and we continue to braid. There are how-to videos that are available online on how to create this look, and it can be done with challah, with lily grass, with really any kind of tall, long, grassy products that you can turn into a beautiful rose. When you do that, again, you're going to want to make sure that it's turned all in the same way, that we're seeing some top of the foliage and some bottom of the foliage. As it spins around, it truly does look like a floral product that has been created. When you cut or manipulate a leaf, and this was Aurelia or Fatsia as it's known, and we've trimmed off to leave just the center that has that two-tone green, it's beautiful, but it also makes it look like another product. If you do that, make sure you're going to do it in an even manner all the way around, creating a great pattern, or purposely going in and out, changing directions to create another pattern. You just want to be consistent in whatever you do. Also using fiber sticks, curly willow, equisetum, any kind of tall branchy product is a great way to give it height. And then do you gradiate the end of it Or do you change height? You would want to make sure whatever we're looking at on the top has a good clean surface that looks like it goes with the rest of the product, and that you don't cut that in a way that might leave the interior exposed in a different format. And then a radial insertion like we've done here, in whichever direction that it might go. It's all of the points, the point of growth being in one area, because as those lines continue down, they would eventually crisscross, and so that's a radial insertion into one area. As we move over to this particular bar that we've utilized, moss can sometimes not be your friend. You want to make sure that you're controlling it. If you use Spanish moss, you can see how this is draped out. Moss is a natural wicker. If we're going to use it on something, I'm going to trim it up, I'm going to shape it up, I'm going to bind it, I'm going to make sure that it clearly goes back down into the container like this if we're using it to cover our mechanics or to cover up our foam. And then if it's sheet moss, same thing. Make sure that it is trimmed, it's flat. You might want to get it wet to make it more pliable, but again, it's a natural wicker. You want to make sure that the moss is inside the container. So as it wicks the water, it drops the moisture back into the container. If you're going to use something like this, which is a sewing technique, make sure that you purposely measure the distance in that pattern so that each insertion is done in the same manner with a good clean insertion from one side to the other, utilizing the same techniques. Or if we did it in a vertical fashion like this, again, that the distance between is equal so that the pattern is clean and sharp and looks really good. Rolling Aspidistra leaves can give you a great look, and you can utilize a little piece of U-glue, dash or dot, or cut some of your U-glue strip to be able to hold it into place. You also can begin to manipulate that foliage. A broad leaf can suddenly become several different, which gives lots of texture tucked down into a design. Or utilizing the weight of foliage, the strong center spine of this foliage is holding it in place, while what we cut off kind of causes it to drape, and it gives it a whole different look in that particular insertion. If we're using some bark, maybe to create layers, it's very similar to the sponge that we talked about over here. Run your knife through the foam, and you can easily insert the bark into that laceration, but you're going to want to make sure that I can't look through there and see any of the foam. If you're going to clean off the stems of a product and really make a good sharp straight line, which I highly encourage to do, you want to make sure that you don't have any of the cloth or maybe the packing that it was added into there, that it is all cleaned off. If we clean all of this off, we want to make sure that we clean the rest of that foliage off, that we're either doing it one way or the other. Again, making sure your pattern stands out. Manipulating foliages like this can get you a lot of creative points, but if it's not done correctly, or if it's handled too much, then we can easily see how the foliage will start to dehydrate from drying out. So we're going to want to make sure that if we do that, that you don't spend too much time manipulating it. As we begin to create things with metal, make sure that it's not crimped, that we don't have any pinches or scars on the metal, and they're all done in a consistent manner. And when it comes to weaving, if we're weaving with metallic or bullion, either way, you're going to want to make sure that it is consistent. Again, we do it all the same direction, we do it all the same width, that it looks almost as though it was done by a machine. Paying close attention to things like baling and binding, banding, making sure they're consistent, that the pattern shows up, that we haven't handled the products too much, are incredibly important when it comes to evaluation and to competition. Remember, with evaluation, it's who does it to match the procedures and the directions that have been given and does it according to those things that are written to the AIFD Guide to Floral Design. And with competition, it's who does that and does it in the best way. We want you to have a very successful outcome to either your certification testing process or that competition that you're entering. Be sure to find us on Facebook, like our page, and check out our YouTube pages for more videos. We are here to help you, and we wish you the best summer possible and the most success for those competitions and certifications coming up. Join us again next time for Design Time. Remember that when it comes to doing those casket saddles or anything that needs to be covered, that may be using some type of styrene or styrofoam base like this, plastic that you want to cover it first with your foliage like we've done here, making sure that you can't see any of the base of that particular container. It's not going to be picked up, but we want to make sure that we do it all the way around as evenly as possible in a decorative manner. That way when we start to do our insertions in the foam up here, that's all going to be covered. If you enjoyed that video and you'd like to check out more, click the subscribe button.